This is the Tapped In Podcast, the podcast for beverage distributors that want to empower their sales team to drive business results. Listen up and welcome back to another episode of Tapped In Sales, your podcast for beer distributors by beer distributors. Mikey is here with me. I'm Bud, your host. Mikey's your data hostess with the mostest.
Data most hostess with the mostest. I like that.
Something like that. Yes. And, you know, Mikey, we're on the back end of Thanksgiving hangover.
Yeah. You're back in the warmth.
The turkey hangover. I'm back in the warmth. We were going to do an episode on Friday, and you were like, yeah, no, not feeling it.
9 a.m. Friday after Thanksgiving. My mind was just
get ready. Like, let's go. I was all ready to go. I was late too, by the way, but I was ready to go. And you're like, no, we're not going to do it. So we're going to do it today. We're doing it now. Same idea. We're going to do it now. We're going to do it live. Yes. Did you have a good Thanksgiving?
Yeah, man, it was great. It was really low key, relaxing, just a lot of time home with family, played some games, got snowed in. I mean, it was great. So
you got snowed in? You got that much snow?
Well, not that much snow to where we couldn't go anywhere, but enough snow to where you didn't want to go anywhere.
Didn't want to. Yeah.
Just lit a fire in the fireplace and got out some games and watched movies, and it was great.
We drove back to the airport. It took us just over 2 hours to make the drive all the way back to the airport with the slow traffic and just the amount of people. And then the weather on the west side of the state, moving east.
Yeah.
Moving east. It was just like, blah. No fun.
You were one of the crazy Thanksgiving Day travelers.
Well, we get to the airport then, and the airport is empty. Like, there's nobody there, which I found fascinating. But we ended up and we got on an earlier flight at like 6:55, 7 o'clock. But we were on like the 9:15. I called Delta early and was like, hey, can we get standby on the earlier flight? And they did. And then nice. We were able to get on an earlier one. So we got back at a reasonable like 10:30 instead of like 1 a.m. So that was a much welcomed change in strategy in the afternoon. So good stuff.
Yeah. Well, glad you made it back home. Get out of the snow.
Yes, it is cold down here. BTW. Cold. It's high. It is 62 right now.
Oh man.
I have my fleece on. It is cold. Lizard Bud is chilly.
Today's the warmest day we've had in 6 days, and my weather app says the real feel is 31.
Yeah, boo. So today, Mikey, we're going to talk about the diversity of route profiles and how they might be unique and different. Some might call it route disparities. Some might call it route profiles. Some might call it just different styles of routes, whether it be urban or suburban mom, yoga pant mom, as accounts as I like to call them. Or is it an inner city urban account? Is it a bar and restaurant in a tourist area route or an on-premise route in a tourist area versus everyday up and down the street business, all that good stuff. So, Mikey, this is something you hold near and dear to your heart as the data guy and data guru. Where do you come at this just from a high level of like designing or putting the right terminology on route types and route disparities?
Yeah, I think, it's something that's near and dear to my heart because we always paid a lot of attention to it. Not so much in the beginning. I think we really started focusing in on it probably about 10 years ago, but just the different types of routes that we have, and to sit there in a management position and target some of our routes equally was just not fair. And to be quite honest, we were missing a lot of opportunity by doing that. So yeah, taking a deep dive, looking at the route makeup, like you said, is it urban? Is it rural? Are they out in the country? Is it mostly on premise? Is it mostly off? A lot of these things that we know already, but when we really, really think about it and when we're sitting down and we're doing our targeting and we're targeting accordingly, it's going to go a lot further. We're going to identify more opportunities. I think about it as a high level. If I were to target 10 high-end placements for everybody in our organization, all of our reps, and I have one rep that can go out there and his route makeup, he can easily get that done. That's not a giant task for him, But then I got guys that it's a struggle to get one or two or three, right? So
Yeah.
now, am I rewarding them accordingly because I didn't target it properly? Or if I would have given the guy that had a great route, a really good route, what should I have made that a target of 14? And the rep that was, on the lower end of the spectrum of the route makeup, maybe a target of 4, something that where he can really achieve. And then the other rep can go out there and really get after it too, to push the needle even further.
Yeah, for sure. I always looked at it from the perspective of like there are high volume accounts, but the socioeconomic and low volume accounts, but the socioeconomic makeup of them are completely different.
Absolutely.
And I mean, maybe it's the economist side of me. It's just to me, a lot of it is derived off of location and socioeconomics of that individual area. And then the third thing would be like route type or store type. Like, I always pick on, C stores, gas station, packaged liquor are they attract a certain type of shopper.
Yeah.
That
It's
store is designed to meet that shopper's needs in a specific way. Same as packaged liquor, same as a party store. They're designed to meet a specific shopper's needs. No different than a grocery store. But when you look at volume, we should be considering the volume and the package type of store and also the location that it is in terms of understanding what the opportunities are for sure.
absolutely, yeah. The convenience store makeup is, and we're going to get a lot of impulse buys out of an account like that. Why aren't we targeting more of our impulse products at an account like that instead of a high end liquor store where that consumer base is going there to buy their high end liquor? That's where our high end products need to be. Whatever that they're looking for, we need to make sure that they have it. Um, but yeah, targeting the convenience in the way that it's set up as convenience, targeting our high end liquor stores as a high end liquor store, and so on and so forth, and just being aware of how these different routes are made up when we're actually doing our targeting goes so much further. And even, I think about like there's opportunities out there with just rural. If I have a rural route, if you think about, you go way out in the country, think about our southern territory, and you might have one account within a 20, 30-mile radius. You might have two or three, but people are driving. That's that destination. They're going there. They all know each other. You spend a couple hours in those accounts doing a reset. Somebody walks in and says, "Hey, Bob," "Hey, Nancy, how the kids?" That's how those accounts are made up. They are relationship driven. They have loyal customers that come in there
Yeah.
all the time. So targeting accounts like that, we do it a little bit differently, right? First, we want to really foster that relationship with the account owner and with their customers. And if we're going out, I'm thinking on premise, if we're going out and we're spending money doing a promotion, do I want to do a big promotion at an account that has different types of customers coming in every day? Maybe it's right downtown and there's coming and they're going, or am I going to spend that money in a rural account to where everybody knows everybody and they know that I went in there and I spent money. They remember my brand. They remember the giveaways that they got. They're in there every weekend drinking. It's the same people, right? Same thing with the off premise when we're fostering those relationships, listening to the consumer, giving them what they want, and not shoving things down their throat that might not be a great fit for them just because it was targeted incorrectly.
Yeah, a sales rep plays an important role of like talking through these opportunities with management in a way that they probably haven't always done too. Some of this is like when you set an objective or an incentive from the very top down, there isn't always enough of a mechanic to like push the conversation back upwards. And that was one of the things that we did our best to try to do of like, hey, let's push this back upwards. And I always came at it from the perspective of if I set a target for somebody, the likelihood of them achieving it is actually substantially less than if they set a target for themselves. So, mechanically, one of the opportunities here is to find a way to start to talk with your sales reps around what their route makeup looks like. And if I'm going to set a goal for a pod target or for a volume target, what might you like it to be? And I think a lot of owners don't like to do that because the owner wants to set the target so high and they're actually fearful that the rep is going to set the target so low
Mm-hmm.
if they did it on like that. In reality, they're probably going to set, and I've seen this play out, the reps are more likely to set a target that is A, reasonable, and B, slightly above what they maybe feel comfortable with, because they know that you're thinking that they're going to set something so low. So
Yeah.
they're doing an internal negotiation with yourself of like, they're doing that internal negotiation themselves to be like, what would Bud accept? Or what do I think Bud will accept? So they're negotiating against themselves before I even have to open my mouth
Yeah.
on
Yeah,
telling them
exactly.
about it.
When we did that experiment, the results were just mind blowing for us. I remember we all kind of sat back. We're like, I didn't really expect that. I
Yeah,
was expecting those targets to be much lower coming
much
from
lower.
them.
I
Yeah.
think it's inherent of people like to be challenged. They feel comfortable being challenged. They don't want to be the bums, or they don't want to be the lazy folks of the group. So there's some groupthink behavior that goes on there. And they also are negotiating against themselves instead of you throwing out a number and then them dragging it down and going back and forth. And frankly, like, they know the routes way better than we do. They're, if you're a wholesaler that has 20 or 30 or 40 routes, like, you're never going to know the account base the way that a rep does at
Yeah.
any stretch of the imagination. There's just too much stuff going on. There's too many details, centrics. I mean, like, you talk about that rural route. The next thing you know, you can see, 10 cases of a Bush Light or a Mill Best come back in close to code. And it's like, what the hell happened there? Like, none of that stuff ever goes out. It's like, well, Bill died.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah, exactly.
Well, who's
Yep.
Bill? Well, Bill's the guy who drank
A case
a
a day
loyal
for the
customer.
last
He
30 years.
drank a case of natty for the last 30 years. He died 3 weeks ago.
Yep.
Like, he was reliable. So like,
Yeah.
those things are just that happens, and we'll never know that or never fully understand that, but the rep does. There was a account that I was looking at, the sold products earlier this year, and it was like, hey, what do you think about putting this 212 of Boulevard? It was a Boulevard wheat beer on a end cap display at a convenience store, like a packaged liquor / gas station. And the rep was like, "No, we won't do that." I'm like, "Well, why wouldn't we do? Like, the data looks really clean. You're selling, you know, it was like 10 or 15 cases every 90 days. It was like, it's perfect for a site for a 5 case display. You turn it once a month. Maybe you can get it more influence out of it, more rate of sale. You could turn it every 3 weeks." And he was like, "No, Jim buys those. He's got a place. It's around the corner. He's buying, a handful of 12 packs a week. He just started renting that place. He, figured out who the owner was of the store, and the owner called me and said, we need to cut these in. This guy's going to buy, a couple 12 packs a week." So they did. That's all it is. It's just one
Yeah.
guy.
Yeah. That's awesome.
It's just one
Yeah.
guy.
Finding consumers like that in your accounts, like, the person that died drinking 30 natties, or a 30 pack of natty a week, stuff like that. When we find those consumers, and because typically our account managers will tell you, oh, that's, you got to don't run out of that. Joe comes in every week. He has to have that. What? Well, now we know Joe comes in is buying our products. We know he's consistent. He's a loyal customer. Hey, I've got this new product. It might fall in somewhere that Joe could be a plus one of. Joe drinks this type of product. I have this. Hey, give this sample to Joe. Next time he comes in, give him this sample,
Yeah.
right? Targeting our customers head on. Like, hey, Joe, I appreciate you buying my products. I recognize that. You're a loyal customer. Try this. You may or may not like it, but you know what he's really going to like? That you recognized him. You gave him something, right? Trying to expand his horizons. If he likes it, he's still going to buy that 30 pack, but he also might buy one of those too, a 6 pack or a single or whatever it is that you gave him.
So one of the reasons why management has such a hard time with dealing and coping with these route disparities is centered around, I want to try to nudge reps out of their comfort zone. And a really, really easy comfort zone to talk about is a high volume urban account where it
Yeah.
is low prices. You're think 30s, think 24s, think single serve and 24-ounce cans. And, we're just going to do a lot of volume at a value, premium to value segment of brand portfolio. And how do we actually, like, the question is, how do you actually walk through a rep to get them out of their comfort zone? Because the reason why we give reps with those types of routes, 10 Heineken six pack placements or 10 Stella six pack placements, or put a Stella or a Heineken, single serve in here, or a Heineken silver, at multiple points of distribution to add a Heineken silver, or a Guinness, 16-ounce can, like, or the RTD game, like all that higher end stuff. The reason why we do that is try to enforce that rep to get creative. But what is a more elegant way to do it rather than just forcing those route numbers or those goals and spreading them out equally amongst everybody?
I love the feedback, right? I love the feedback from the rep, having an open conversation. What do you think about this? Do you think it would work? And then listening to what they have to say, because most likely they're going to say, yeah, we could try it. Or they're going to give you a really good reason why it's not going to work.
Yeah.
But in all reality, they have the account with the foot traffic. They have the people coming in. They have the foot traffic to try some of these newer items, right? Especially if it's urban, like you were saying, where they're having a lot of newer customers. It's not the same old people coming in. Maybe it's closer to town somewhere, where we could throw some of these items in there and try it. Because if they get stuck in a route, especially if their route makeup is a little bit of everything, right? Just a little bit of rural, a little bit of urban, and they kind of just get stuck in their way, and they get stuck into selling that one particular account type, where Bob's buying his 30 pack every week, and they kind of get in a little bubble to where they don't want to try creative things. Like, oh, that customer's not here, but hey, you know what? This account checks all the boxes to try something new and try something creative. Let's do it, and if you don't think it's going to work, I need to know why. And let's throw it at the wall, because we got the foot traffic coming in. If we have some newer customers in there, and those are the accounts that need to be targeted, in my opinion, for some of our newer items, right? Some of the things that we're trying to get out in front of people, those higher, I want to say turnover, but like different customer makeups are walking in there. It's not the same person all the time.
Yeah. The piece that I have about it is like, there has to be a why. And if you're just doing like a generic pod goal for a given period, and you just want to see an ever expansive pod growth, the reps are just going to go out and hit those pod goals where they can and how they can and as efficiently as possible. We've seen it time and time again. It's like busy work. And how do we get the reps into understanding the way and the method of the madness and the why we're trying to actually see this incremental 19.2, which is I was with a I don't want to name them, I don't want to get them in trouble, but I was with a big craft brewer's kind of like state director last week, and they were talking about how some of their single serve business is better suited to be classified as an FMB, even though they are a craft business, or a craft brewery would be considered largely a craft brewer. And how do they, think through adding products into that set for a rep when they're actually an FMB, but they're kind of accidentally lumped into the craft world. And we've seen it time and time again in those 19.2 business, that high alcohol content product that has got a unique taste profile and is in the 19.2, like can do really well in these urban accounts. So I think I like to see when reps really understand the why, and when managements are talking about the why, and we're not just creating busy work to place pods to place pods.
Yeah. Yeah. Showing them the data behind it, telling them the success stories, right? Thinking, because I've mentioned that quite a few times out on the road with reps, where we've identified some products in their portfolio that would fit that mold, right? Kind of that crossover. Especially in the 19.2, higher ABV, a little bit more flavor, probably right on the fine line of the actual style that it says on the can. And first they look at you kind of like, that sounds really silly, Then you say, well, you tell them about the success stories, the data behind it, and they're like, yeah, I can see how that makes sense. Yeah, maybe I'll try it. Or vice versa, I'm in accounts with people and they have one, maybe two of those in there, and it's always on their top of their singles. And their first reply is, yeah, I've got a couple of people in here hooked on these and doing really well. Well, you know what? You got more than a couple of people hooked on them. The whole country is hooked on this type of style, this type of beverage right now. Expand it, expand the shit out of it. What else do you have to throw at the wall, right? Get it in there.
Yep. Yep. It fits in that wheelhouse of like single serve, higher profitability, good velocity around it too. The same thing goes for like on premise too, where if you're in an on premise, so many of us look at a draft and it's just like, hey, I want to get my IPA there.
Yeah.
When there's like 4 IPAs on already, you
Yeah.
got 20 handles or 12 handles, and then somewhere between 12 and 20 handles, and it's like there's 4 to 8 IPAs on. Eight's obnoxious, but we've seen it before,
Oh yeah. Yep.
and it's like that watering hole has been fished dry.
And you're not
Why
going
don't
to
we
go in
go
there and
try and do
replace one
something
of them.
different?
Yeah. Yeah. That's my favorite conversation.
Yeah.
Being out on the road is walking into a bar like that or an on-premise establishment, and the the supplier or the rep wants to target an IPA and it's already just oversaturated, right? Then it's like, where else? What are we missing? Hey, everybody put all their eggs in this one basket. It's called an IPA basket. They left a lot of the basket wide open for us to just jump in and take advantage of that. Where else are we missing it? Do they have all of the IPAs? Do they have an imperial? Do they have a hazy? Do they have a fruity? Right? Do they have one of those borderline IPAs? Or if all of those buckets are filled, what else are we missing? Is there a wheat? Is there a fruit beer? Is there a cider? Is there whatever else? I think that walking into an on-premise establishment that's just oversaturated with IPAs like that is usually a pretty good target for what else. They're
Mhm.
missing something, unless they have 100 handles and none of them are turning. Then they're definitely missing something.
And to me, this is going to sound really weird, but I just don't feel compelled to compete in that overfished area. Like if these sales reps understand this, like if I showed you and we put it on a lake, and inherently people understand this, and I said, hey, there's 6 boats over here all fishing in the same spot. Where do you want to go fish? You probably not go. You probably go fish somewhere else.
Mm-hmm.
But we're happy to sell beer like that.
Yeah, yeah. And that ties right back into route disparities and knowing your route makeup, because I mean, we know it firsthand, but there's a lot of people listening to this that have probably a local brewery that has one hell of a whatever style. Could be an IPA or could be whatever. And that's just usually the horse, right? You kind of don't compete with it. You kind of let it be, or maybe you have a couple of those. We had 3 of them in our market. And you just kind of let those be, let them be what they are. And then you go after something else. But if you were to set the same targets for a route makeup like that, if one rep handles that whole area and that brewery is in that area, if you're targeting IPA from another supplier equally amongst all of the reps and
Mhm.
all of the routes, it's not gonna come out right for that rep, right? I mean, that rep is already at a disadvantage going up against what's already out in the market and what's on that route. So getting a little bit more localized targeting, route specific with, okay, well, if we know that route A can't go out and get these IPA handles, we've got some, I don't know, Imperial in here that we really need to move, or we have some blonde or a red or whatever it might be. Let's have him focus on that, or that route focus on that brand, while the rest of the routes can focus on moving this IPA, and vice versa too. I mean, it goes both ways, but getting that localized targeting down to specific routes goes a long way, because you could be leaving a lot on the table,
Yeah,
and you could be discouraging a lot of reps
for
when
sure.
those targets are cascaded down equally, especially volume targets. Being out with reps with VXP, and the first thing that they always say is, my route isn't the same as that route over there. I'm already at a disadvantage. I can't sell like that person can. Well, at VXP, we do target by route. We look at all the routes. So, and if you're in your own organization, kicking down whether there's supplier incentives or just objectives or whatever it is, looking at it and targeting by route would go so much further too on discouraging a lot of those reps.
For sure. So choose your own adventure. Give you a route goal and a volume goal that's unique and specific to your route, based on the makeup and the sales that have been happening in the past from a trend and a profitability focus. And then the reps choose their own adventure. So if you have
Yeah.
if you have a value mill best and 25-ounce can and 30-pack can environment, and that's what it takes to make you successful. You're, grinding through pennies and nickels and dimes to find incremental profitability opportunities, and you're grinding through like smaller volume numbers to find that incremental 19.2 or that incremental, FMB or something like the Sazerac Fireball, where it's incremental profitability, but it fits right into that socioeconomic piece. So you're choosing that adventure, where if you're in a more of a high-end socioeconomic area where RTDs are already hot, you could sell things like Cutwater and High Noon and those higher GP items. Like, that's what you're going to be compared against, and that's your baseline of what you're going to be compared against and focusing with too, for sure.
Yeah,
that
absolutely.
that one, question you talked about was, you brought up the IPA triangle,
Yeah.
and it was Founders, Two Hearted, and Crooked Tree.
Yeah.
Is it even a triangle anymore? It's Crooked
Well,
Tree,
Crooked Tree is, it's a two-legged stool now.
two-legged stool now.
Yeah. I mean, back in the day,
Bike
Dark Horse, their Crooked Tree IPA being in our market,
was big.
uh, was a horse. I mean, they sold a lot, and it was everywhere. And then we all know what Founders all day IPA was doing at the time, and Bell's Too Hard, it just couldn't be touched. So
It still can be. It's still great.
still
And
can't
so
be.
is Founders all day is still great too. But that's a good thing of like, we continue to try to nibble around the edges of that IPA game because we never had anything that was really that big horse. And we just chose to strategically not fight.
Yeah,
The way that but
for a while.
we
We
did, but
did. We
it
tried in the
never
beginning.
it never worked.
It never worked. And we had suppliers that would push us and try to get us to fight. And it wasn't until we really started standing up and just saying, get in the car, let's go for a ride.
Yeah.
Let's look at some of these accounts and identifying that we can get that on. I can get that on tap for you if that's what you want. But I guarantee you, I'm not going to sell as many as if we put this on tap. Still from your same portfolio, maybe within, an IPA style, but I guarantee you I'm going to sell 2-1 if I try to compete with that IPA. And it wasn't until we really started pushing back when we found the success of doing that.
And the kind of big takeaway from this is like, as an operator and a leader, if you're listening to this, we got to start to own the disparities and the discrepancies between the routes, celebrate them for why they're different, and understand it. And now once we start to understand it and kind of actually talk about it and really kind of collaborate with the reps on it, then you're going to find ways to expose your supplier partners to this. And you're going to find powerful ways to kind of teach people about your business the way, instead of being kind of old school of like, I know my market and you don't. It's like, well, let me teach you about my market. Like, let me come and show you that, hey, this is an incredible store that looks like it does a ton of CDs. And
Yeah.
By all means, it is an incredible store, but they're selling 45 to 50 cases of Bud Ice 25-ounce cans every single week. They're selling, 30 or 40 suitcases of Bud Light and 10 of Ultra. And like, those are the top three, and they're miles ahead of everybody else. So like, it's a good account and it looks great on paper from a volumetric side, but like, there ain't a Cutwater in sight here.
Yeah.
And there frankly probably shouldn't be.
Right.
And, we probably don't need Stella 12s here, even though on paper it probably would look like it should be, but nobody's buying it. Whatever it was back then, $18 12 pack out of here, or a $16 12 pack out of here. No way.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. It also opens up that opportunity too, to where, Cutwater, you mentioned Cutwater, that is a highly looked over brand right now, right? With a lot of pressure behind it, distribution, volume, points of distribution, everything. But when we look at route makeups, and if I'm going to target new distribution for Cutwater, maybe half of my reps I'm targeting 4-packs, but maybe there's a handful of reps that I'm targeting singles, right? And I want singles distribution. Don't put that 4-pack on the shelf.
Nope.
Open them all up, put them in the singles area, put them right under Monaco or whatever's competing, and that's where I want it. And that you're going to be targeted differently than my high-end party store route where we can sell the 4-packs
It
and
just
variety
makes
packs and
sense.
everything else.
Yeah.
Just makes sense. Yeah.
It's an easier.
Because I mean, there's going to be some reps that get it and they'll be able to figure that out on their own. Oh yeah, I'll just break these open and do singles. But there's also going to be a lot that really don't. And next thing you know, you have Cutwater going to die somewhere that it really just doesn't belong in a 4-pack.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a great example. And it's the thinking through it through the shopper's lens. Who is the shopper? Why are they there? What are they looking for? How are they looking to buy stuff? Thinking through it that way is a great way to start the conversation. Because when we started this, it was socioeconomic makeup. It was, who's going to the store, what's the geography of it, those are all things that are shopper centric questions first. When you talk about to go back to another episode, I don't remember what number it was, where we talked about data integrity, and it was, what is the shopper behavior in each store that turns into the classification of that store. That's the way we should be doing it, not the way we think it should be or what we say it should be.
Yeah, absolutely. Yep, putting yourself in the shoes. The best way to put yourself in the shoes, and we found out firsthand, is go do a reset. Join your reset team. Hang out in that account for 3 hours. You'll quickly realize who that consumer is, what their buying habits are, what they're buying, how often. So, and that's how, we obviously knew our single accounts. It wasn't until I would hang out in some of those accounts for 3 or 4 hours doing a total reset that I would find the same consumer buying the same package, single serve, about every hour to hour and a half, instead of just picking up a 6-pack, walking out and being done, coming back and forth. Oh, I'll just have one. Then they drink that one. Oh, I'll have just one more. They go back and they get one more.
Final.
Next thing you know, you could have saved a lot of money by just buying that 12-pack.
100%. Yep. Well, good stuff, Mikey. We got a lot of good things cooking here. We had a couple days back in the saddle post Thanksgiving. What is it called? The pteronifrol?
What is it?
The turkey enzyme that makes you sleepy?
Oh, tryptophan.
Tryptophan. Yeah, whatever it is, whatever it is that we're wearing off. We're on, vertical and second wind and racing to the end of the year and Christmas and the holidays. So are you doing Elf on the Shelf?
Yeah. Oh man, I hope my kids don't listen to this, but they are way too old to be doing this shit anymore. They really are. And we, as parents last year, were like, thank God that's done. And it was about a week ago, my son looked at me and goes, isn't Elfie coming soon? And I go, I don't know. Is Elfie coming back? And my daughter goes, my daughter's 12, soon to be 13, goes, well, Elfie better be coming back. My wife looked at me like, oh God, here we go. We had some friends over this weekend for Thanksgiving and played some games and stuff, and they were talking about that. And their kids are about the same age as ours, and they were in the same boat. And it's like they don't want to give up. They just don't want to let go. So the wife of the friends, she said, you know what? When this is all over, we're having an elf burning party. We're burning
an elf burial. Yes, an elf burial. A Viking funeral for the elf.
Yeah. Oh man.
We sat down at the airport in Detroit, and this young girl noticed, because we were traveling with Jetta, this young girl noticed Jetta, and then we started chatting, and Jetta was being a pain in the ass because Jetta doesn't really love young kids. For those of you who don't know who Jetta is, she's my 22-pound French bulldog. So she's an incredible adult dog and loves adults, not a big fan of kids. And this poor girl was just all excited about Jetta. And then she was couldn't pet Jetta because she was being fussy. She was like, well, then let me show you my Elf on a Shelf. And she had Elf on a Shelf all bundled up they were going to Disney, and they brought Elf on the Shelf in Tupperware. And Mom was like, remember, you can't touch her. And she was like, well, yeah, that's why he's in the Tupperware, because I'm not touching him. So maybe we'll have an Elf on the Shelf join us in the background. He can talk about, whatever we have coming up in the next topics as we lead into Christmas.
It's Christmas time at the halls, so we're decorating it a little festive. So yeah, maybe Elfie will join us for an episode.
I love it. Well, thanks for everybody for listening. If you like what you're hearing, subscribe, share with a friend. Remember, we're here on a weekly basis to share all the things we know about beer distribution, for beer, by beer. So thanks for joining us. Mikey, you rock, and cheers.
Cheers.